Recording started.
Yeah, and that was
Okay, welcome everybody. A few technical difficulties up here that we're still experiencing, but I have got a little hand up here that tells you where I'm getting information from, and the workshop for problem-based learning right now has morphed into the destination problem-based learning. And I took a scenario-based learning workshop. And that's really what this is, because the scenarios provide that workforce development link between the problem-based learning and then trying to incorporate the demands of our industry in our classroom. So the scenario-based learning then uses the problem, incorporates or gets the students involved in the communication skills that they need, in the self-educating, the active learning, the working in teams that our advisory board especially has been very interested in seeing our students become more adept at. And in the past, we haven't really had very many team-based projects occurring at the college. They've been working in teams in a lot of the other classrooms. The social sciences are really big on teamwork. And those of us in the computer area are kind of going, let's see teams. Okay, we've got everybody in rows at these desks. These guys all have their backs to the people behind them. These two can talk to each other. That's a great team, right? So we tried to get over the hurdle there of the teamwork in the classroom. And the scenario-based learning training that I went to helped me to make the transition, and I personally knew it was important. So what I'm going to be doing today is telling you what I did to be comfortable with the scenario-based, problem-based learning in my own classroom based on what I am currently teaching. So how many of you are web developers out there? Oh, good. What areas are you teaching in right now? What are your main fields? Can you throw some stuff out? What are you? Oh, yeah, good. Programming. Sure. Okay. Most programmers? Networking. Networking? Okay, networking. You guys are in labs, right? You do the lab stuff. You do design? Oh, yeah, okay. So are you on the graphic side then? Yeah. Okay, the graphic side. Anybody else? Applications. Applications, sure. Yeah, yeah. So here's what I had a problem with to begin with, and that is, let me kind of explain the setup for problem-based learning. How many of you are familiar with problem-based learning? Is anybody doing that in their classroom right now? Problem-based? It kind of occurs, I think, that we get these problems. Are you working students in teams to do that? Sure. Okay, and you already got your teams up and running. Oh, good, I might have some questions for you later. All right. My challenge is I am in web development, and I have so many little details that the students have to learn. Programming, you've got some broad concepts that are applied effectively in different ways. You work on efficiency, and then you build out from there. But in the web development area, I have so many. It's just there's all these little tiny details that I need to make sure the students know. I'm also preparing students to be possibly freelancers. They might actually go out there on their own, and they better be prepared. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a lot of crap on the web. That's technical term. There's a lot of stuff on the web out there right now that really does need to be updated, revamped. My biggest concern in my classrooms is I want to make certain that my students come out of there realizing that accessibility has to be considered anywhere that you go. You know, I'm coming from an educational institution. You are all coming from an educational institution. What you create out there has to be accessible to anyone on any device. This is not only things like your screen readers, your assistive technologies, but your mobile devices as well. All right? And if you properly craft your pages now, they will be accessible to all of these other users. 20% of the population on the web uses assistive technology. If you haven't made your pages accessible to that technology, you have chopped out 20% of your population. You've got a commercial site. Do you want to immediately eliminate 20% of your users? So that's that definitely is my little what do you want to say, my sounding box for this, because I really want to make sure that my students come out understanding what that means. So we call it the semantic web. Well, I'm not going to go into this. I could actually the whole class on my class. So here I am looking at problem-based learning, and most of the time it kind of runs like this. You spend the first part of your semester teaching them, getting them, they've got the concepts under their belt, and then you put them together in a team where they show that through communication, kind of a project management, they set up a timeline, they decide whose strengths, who has what strengths, they put them together on a project, they have deliverables at certain points in time during this project, they then have to work together, decide, and they encounter all of these issues that are incorporated in teams. I mean, teams can be ugly. Okay, sometimes they're not very fun. And the students need to experience that failure. They have to know what real life could be like. So I do ask them at the end, I say, hey, do you think now you could walk into a team situation on the job and be able to pull from your little bag of tricks on how to survive some of these things that we've gone through this semester? And I get good feedback from the students, but as I say, during the time that they're working on teams, it does get painful. Okay, so one of the first things that we have to do is we have to train the students, but I had some specific requirements with mine, and that is that I couldn't just have them work in teams on a final project. The reason I couldn't have this done is because, okay, let's envision this. Okay, we have a team of 4 people. They're going to do what as a final project? I'm in web development. They're going to create a website. How many pages are going to be on this website? How am I going to ensure that every student can create an accessible form? Am I going to be sure that every student creates an accessible table? Something that when it's linearized, that it can be readable without benefits of your cascading style sheets or your JavaScript. Something that's in the appropriate order for a screen reader to read. Okay, so is my site going to have 5 tables in it, or 4 tables? Is it going to have 4 forms? Is it going to have? And I'm thinking this is ridiculous because 2/3 of my students will work alone. They may not work in a team environment, but the team, I have to make sure that they have those skills as well. I'm doing them a disservice if I don't. So I thought, okay, that means we start teams earlier. So my very first project with them is getting them up and running on the tools that we use in web development. Now, I can't afford to give everybody Dreamweaver, so I have a favorite little editor, and then they have to install some template files in this, and then they have to show that they can upload some pages to the server, that they can actually log into the server successfully. They have to know how to look at their page from a browser. I mean, sometimes it's hard for them to discriminate the fact that they are using file transfer protocol to get stuff on the server, but that's not how you do it. You have to go outside and go into a browser to be able to do it. So these are little tasks that would generally have taken me some time in class the first couple days, getting them up and running, and I thought, that's a great project for a team. So I started them early. And then I thought, well, we'll do a little something more sophisticated, and it kind of fell into where I had given them an easier task to do, a little more complicated one, and then a little bit easier one about mid-semester, and then a more complicated one, because sometimes you just get teams that are not very functional. And I don't feel that students need to be punished by being part of this team or having these people or this person on their team that has been like an anchor. So I wanted to be able to look after my team. Okay, well, you've got new teams, so you should start easing them into the team thing again. I also wanted to make sure that my team facilitators, you've got to have somebody at the helm. And I wanted my team facilitators to rotate as much as possible. So if I have a working team that has been there the entire semester, every person will have been the facilitator. Okay? So that's where I'm coming from. Does that give you enough information? There's a little bit of the overview. And then for me, we're done with teams 3 or 4 weeks before the semester ends, because then they have time to work on their final project. Then I don't have to worry about trying to craft some final project that has everybody demonstrating they know everything. Okay? So this is what I wanted to show you, and I'm going to go to my site here because I teach in an online format. We use Angel at Truckee Meadows Community College. How many of you anybody using an online format? What kind of use?
Angel.
Yes, Angel. Although I think we're going to go to Canvas. This was an aside, sorry about that. Because Angel, yes.
Yes, and Angel just got bought by Blackboard.
Blackboard.
Yeah. And Blackboard got bought out.
They bought out WebCT.
Yeah, but Blackboard got bought out too.
Oh, world domination. Oh, Moodle. Yes, yes. And we looked at Moodle, the new one, but anyway. Okay, so let's go because of our little time constraints here. So let's see. Okay. Okay, and let me come on up here to view, and I'm going to get a little real estate back here. And okay, so in here you can see I've got courses up already for the spring semester, and my winter feeling class is the beginning web development class. Last semester we had reduced enrollment. It just turned out to be a huge registration glitch that is not going to occur again this semester. And these were rolled in here. I had kind of an interesting scenario, this scenario, of having half of my class really be online students and the other half being in class. And so I'm combining all of my content. This semester I'm starting out separated. Hopefully they'll stay that way. And we won't have any more faux pas. So what these classes have just been recently turned over. There we go, rolled over, so that I can show you all the current content, and I don't have to worry about FERPA showing you students and their grades. All right. So if you are not familiar with the Angel, let me go back here to the home page of this course. Or let's see here. So a quick overview, because you can act in just like beginning students do. When they open up the page right here, they see something like this screen. And so I have down here some discussion forums. This is how I allow my students to communicate aloud. This is how I encourage them to communicate. And I created these. The discussion forum will, that I can block it so that just, that team can see it. But here they can also upload their files. They can attach them to a post just the same way as, So they're not in a Dropbox kind of environment where they're sort of all muddled together. But at least they have this way of accessing, and they can do this, of course, around the clock. All right. So my inbox, the course syllabus is right here. And in here what I've done is I've introduced the scenario that I'm going to be using. I'm just going to briefly show this to you because our point here is not to dwell too long on things. Okay, so course content right here, our learning outcomes, everybody recognizes those. Now, what we have, scenario-based learning, and here, imagine you've been hired as a web developer trainee. My own company, Bristlecone Development and Design, Bristlecone Design too. Over the next course and so on. So this kind of sets the stage for the little scenarios. So I'm trying to treat it as a business as much as possible. So they're going to be getting kind of business look-alike documentation. Their facilitators, I talk about their training this whole time. They are under a training supervisor this whole time that they're undergoing their training. And I am running my tasks alongside of what their normal courses would be. So that was a little tricky to begin with, and I had to decide how I was going to best design that. And fortunately, we have a couple of the trainers there at the college, so all I have to do is tootle on down to their office and say, okay, what do I do about this? So you can see that what I have is I have what looks like 5 tasks on here. But the weekly training that the students undergo, can you read that? Okay. The weekly training task basically is where I revert to talking like a teacher. And while I'm in the other tasks, then I am their training supervisor. So in this particular task, each one of these then is 1 week, and you can see I've still got last semester's dates on there. But each one of these has the content from that particular chapter of the textbook. So textbook content has all gone in here, and it's all tucked away then in what is called their weekly training. Okay? So before we even get the show on the road, however, they need to start here. So welcome and orientation, and this is where you can, for a brief period of time, you get them set up to be on the team. You hope they read this. How many of you have noticed that students don't like to read? Okay, we were talking earlier with someone, they don't take notes anymore either. Do you know this? Your students take notes? What do they think they're doing? You know. Okay, but anyway, so the information is here, and Elaine hopefully will have a few seconds left if I don't get talking too long. She's got a lovely task that gets the students in there and tells them about their teamwork in their task. So I'm going to let her talk about that because we don't just toss you in there and say, oh, wow, they're going to work on teams. Do the rest of you, do you prepare your students to work on teams like that? Do you have any little something that you give them first as a sample or a warm-up or a...
I do a very large project at the end of the class as a final project. Mm-hmm. But all along the way, almost in every face-to-face class meeting, I give them a 10-minute or 15-minute type of task that they work on in a team.
Oh, that's neat.
And part of that is, and I first during the first 4 weeks of the class, to work with different people each time. And then about a third of the way through the class when they pick the people for the final project.
So yeah, that's another challenge that I'm going to talk about too, is how do you get your team set up? With me, my first task is they actually have to do the first task together as a team before they can really get started on the classwork. So that's been the trick. Who else has been already doing teams? Do you want to share with how, preliminary team stuff?
Yeah, I just like to hear how you do that.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. So in here, and let me see, here's welcome. And again, why scenario-based learning? This is a really nice little YouTube video. I'll just go down these kind of quickly. The welcome right here kind of sets the stage. You can see that right now, Senior Vice President of Client Engagements. I know you're going to think I made up that name, but I actually had, because it's like everybody's gone. The economy's been tough. But I had a really wonderful woman over there at a very large firm in town. They had 120 employees, called One-to-One Interactive. And I called her one day on the phone. She had kind of given me the overview of their organizational structure. So I called her one day and I said, well, listen, if you've got several new employees or whatever, who talks to them? And she said, oh, we have a Senior Vice President of Client Engagements. And I thought, that doesn't sound to me like someone that would be talking to employees, talking about job titles and how. But she said, yeah, that would be the person. So so we have this memo form, and you're going to see this on everything then that deals with the tasks. So this particular one welcomes them in, tells them that their project manager will go next. Initial assignments will be from the project manager. So I'm the training supervisor while they're inside their training. And let me back up here. Okay, then the orientation overview. Now, these pieces right here, we have generally 4 pieces that I'll be talking about later. This one's a little bit different. Before you begin, it tells them how to go through. It tells them the pieces that they will be seeing on each one of the tasks. And these pieces are the documents that are created for every single one of the tasks. So there's just kind of a certain pattern that you're following with these, which is very nice because it gives you a place to, first of all, give them an overview, kind of tell them what's going on, tell them exactly, or, as exactly as you want to, the requirements, what you expect them to have done. And I have a final due date for the task, but I don't tell them how to get there.
they have to determine how to get there. So one of the things that's going to be happening that you'll see is where the facilitator is the one who has to be able to set up a timeline. And notice the first task, they don't often allow themselves enough time. I make my tasks due on a day. I used to do at a certain time on a day. Hogwash. So now I just make them due on that day. Well, they'll be nice and they'll say, well, you know, by 10 o'clock on that day, make sure you get everything into me. I'll make sure it's in the box by midnight. And I'm thinking, you're going to get over that right away. Because you don't want to be having to fiddle with people's permissions that close to midnight. You're going to want to be elsewhere. So they get a little more ruthless with their timelines by the second task. All right. So anyway, these things, the resources, a very nice place to put your resources. You can have links there to your documents. Me, of course, I'm using a bunch of online web resources. And then your final debrief, because one of the most important components of this is to have the students reflect how they did. What would they have done differently? What were their hiccups? How did they solve them? What do they think is really important? Okay, so they also have to decide what you're really asking them to do, and it's just amazing how many different ways that students can interpret what you write down. Have you noticed? Yeah. I'm not sure how much of that is intentional or unintentional. Sometimes I think it's for convenience. Okay, so working with tasks, I'm just going to show you the same style of document here where we talk about the things to kind of think about, you know, in working with tasks here. All right. So all of these are out there on the web. Now, of course, this is in my Angel class, but as I said before, I'm going to have Elaine show us her task. It's up there on the web and it's available for you. It was written up as a scenario. So that is something that you can be referring to because we borrow very liberally from everybody else's. And then the tasks, and then of course working with teams. The gotchas, working with teams. Some of these tips here, group work, effective meetings, a few things on here. We talk more about this in the classroom. I try to be informative and kind of watch students' discussion to begin with too to help them on these things because I can't guarantee that every student's going to be looking at these documents. I mean, you hope that they will. And you hope that they remember that they're here. If they finally kind of bump their heads on things, they can come back. Most of it, I think, it's just like the students. They'd rather just jump in, and then if it's not working well, then start kind of wondering why. Okay, so back to my course content. The very first task, then, there are tools and procedures. Now, in most of these tasks, we'll have some subtasks. And I've kind of fallen into being able to have my facilitator submit their documents as one subtask, and then the final document. And here's what I do is students are responsible for submitting everything on time to the facilitator. The facilitator basically wraps that information up and gives it to me. So, for example, in the first one where I said that they were having to install their software, they have to be surprised how many people can't install a zip file, the contents of a zip file into a folder. Okay, so we're learning how to do that. But they don't mind asking another student to be able to do that. They're a little reluctant in a general discussion area to put in a question in there because they don't want to sound stupid. So I had the third week of the semester one time, the guy goes, I don't see those folders that you're all talking about. He's never made it off the home page. He's never seen the tabs up at the top indicating that you know, your home page is on this tab and your course content page is where all the course content was. He's 3 weeks into the class, he hadn't gotten past the syllabus. You know, so, and we have an orientation class in Angel that new users see first thing. So I don't know how he got it. But anyway, okay. Talking of tales here. So the subtask then right here is where the facilitator would do the final deliverable is here. So I'll give you a little overview then of the format that's being used in each one. Now you can see that this time the memo is from the training supervisor. Continue with some of the preliminaries here. Member introductions, squad assignments here. Some items are submitted individually, some undergo peer review before submission. I do have them test their web pages. They run through the validator to make sure that there aren't errors in there. As I tell them, every single error that comes back is something the browser has to make a decision about, and that's an area that could cause your page to look different from one browser to another. Some of the areas too will flag things where they haven't included some accessibility things, an alternate text for an image, for example. Okay. All right. So the overview then is the little summary, kind of telling them what we're going to be doing. Then the requirements here. Each squad facilitator. So here's what the squad facilitator has to do. The squad number, they can number and name themselves. I give them numbers and they just been keeping them. The facilitator, a list of the action submissions that each member will have to be giving them. In other words, have you really read what you have to submit? Have you really read what they're supposed to be doing? Have they read what they're supposed to be doing? Okay, the timeline, the frequency and method of communication, how your squad will know what you submitted so they can verify it. So once the facilitator has put everything together, then wouldn't they like to see it to make sure there's stuff there? Questions on this?
Well, I have one question. Do the students have to run this stuff through validators, or do you just test them?
Well, here's what we do in this particular spot. No, because they haven't created a web page yet. And I'd actually given them a web page in a zip file because this is brand new. They really can't do the book work. They could, because you can use any text editor on a web page. We just make a lot more errors that way. But at this point in time right here, they don't even know what that is. So this is the one that gets them up and running. This is the one where they're going to be, let me scroll down just a tiny bit, and I don't know if you can read it. I hope you don't mind if I kind of read to you here. So here is what I'm giving them, and then down here I further elaborate. Because I found, especially with the very first task thing, right at the beginning, people are scared. If they don't know what you're talking about when you say FTP, I mean, they're already like this in here. So I made this first task giving them a lot more instructions. Okay, it's more hand-holding than some of my other tasks. So here's what they're going to do. Each facilitator will submit one document into the Dropbox. This will be comprised of 3 screenshots. How will you do this? How will you do that? Everybody knows? Okay. From each member of the squad indicating the following requirements have been met. The squad member has successfully installed our little editor and the contents of the zip file, which contains the new template. Okay. The squad member has successfully uploaded a sample web page to the server, and the squad member can view the web page in the browser at their specific URL. So think about it. You're walking into my class and I just gave you this to do. I guess not everybody who's in my class really has any web experience. They just thought it would sound neat. Okay? All right. So debrief questions from each squad member should also be submitted by the facilitator in the same document. So they can look at what their answers are to be used, because everything that they submit will be in their squad, the discussion area. Okay? So they're reading each other's and asking questions there. So it's everybody can see what everybody else has written. Okay, and then I'm feeling, there we go. Sorry for them, because that's quite the blow there. So then I've got this action plan down below. So this tells them specifically what to do. So this time, this is the hand-holding task for them. And you can say, review these tips here. I'm making, go back and take a look, working with tasks. What does it tell you to do? And then select a facilitator, create a timeline, due dates are indicated on the folder, and so on and so forth. Install here, and I actually have some detailed instructions in a folder in this particular one. My resource, I have a resource folder in this one and not just a resources page. Okay. So I can show you those too if you'd like to see them. Install the Firefox browser and the extensions. So we have extensions for FTP, the Fire FTP. I don't know how many of you with Firefox users on both Firefox. But we have the extensions. We also have a toolbar, and this makes it very easy to go validate pages on the web because it's a direct link.
and then upload your first page to the server. If they kind of know what they're doing, they can create a page. If not, I have provided one for them that they have to unzip and upload. And let's see, download and install your data files. In here, in the website set of instructions on there, that's where I detail exactly how they can go find their page on the web after they've uploaded it. So I'm making reference here to other documents that are in here. So any questions? Maybe I'll go. All right. So you can see that I have those pages then that, the 4 pages, I have the overview. You just saw the requirements document. This time I have a resources folder, and then I'll have the debrief questions over here. So each one of these follows this same pattern so that they get very comfortable with that. They know where to go directly to find out how to do things. They know what instructions are there, and I think that that helps them on their later tasks. So here, the installation instructions. Again, just use the links here, download, a lot of it, just all the things that can help them get along. But of course they have to look at this. They can ask each other some questions. And you can see there's a lot of documentation going along with this. All right. Here, an example of really lousy code. Well, at least it has its archive though, but telling them also what to look for, and hopefully they'll take this with them when they go out on the web, because I also have them post some web resources, and I want them to be aware that this is what we are, not looking for. You start seeing some capitalized tags and things. That's 11, 12 years old. Come on. Okay? We're in technology. All right. Okay. Let's see here for them. Website setup, class ID. I was using, we actually work with the university considerably, and our email for the students used to be housed on the university server, and it also came with some associated space where they could use that as their storage site for their web pages. It was a web server. And then they decided to phase out one of these old servers. I don't know why. Kind of left us hanging. So the interesting thing is that not only our department, but the graphics department, our GRC department, also needed to have some, space. And we can get money a lot easier if we can show that we've got more than one department that this will benefit. We can use our student lab fees for these things. And we also have a technology fund that we can use. So we actually said, we're going to be accommodating the graphical arts. And then it turns out journalism over there, they wanted to show how to create online newspapers. So they were also doing some stuff like this. So we have actually 3 departments now using our server, but we bought a new server. We're using VMware. I just came from the VMware demo in there. But so each one of us have our own little spot on there, and then the students go in. We've got, anyway, they all log in using their email usernames and passwords. They log into Angel using their email usernames and passwords, and they upload the FTP using those same usernames and passwords. So our IT department has been really nice about working with us. Okay, so all of these instructions that are in here for the students, and not only do I tell them how to name their files, use lowercase, remove spaces, special characters. Even at the end of the semester, I'll catch somebody. Windows likes to capitalize things, have you noticed? And so many of these people forget to remove all that. Because it is a Windows, this is something too, is the previous server we had, those Unix, it didn't like capital letters. I mean, uppercase and lowercase letters are completely different on a Unix box. Windows doesn't care. So they don't often get hit with this because Windows is a lot more forgiving, but you can't depend on having a Windows server to host all of your web pages. Most of the time it's not. I think they're Linux, Unix. So they'll find out there when things break. But then I also tell them how to go and find, so they have to at least write down somewhere so that they know what the web address is to go access their pages. So I have them working in a group at the very beginning. They've got a team there that they can ask about how to do this. My day class definitely has an advantage because they're coming into school anyway, and so they will have different meeting times set up. Like, I like to do an overview of things on one day. You might call it our staff meeting on one day, and then I give them the second day of, because we're meeting twice a week, and I give them the second day then where they're face to face and they can hammer things out. So what I discovered, I come from a math background, and we did a lot of groups. You know, we had 4 students, you turn the desks, and you have one high, you have one low, you don't put them together, you have two middles. Anybody ever been to groups like this? No, you ought to see groups, tribes down at the elementary level. Do you remember that, anybody? No, anyway. But what I discovered is that it's nice to have someone more knowledgeable, but you don't want them very knowledgeable on a team. You'd really rather have their capabilities be pretty close. So I meet up with my online students, and I have a mandatory lab right before the semester starts, or the first week of the semester. And I have them come in, and then I check, who knows what I'm talking about if I say FTP, who has done it. And I start kind of moving students around that way and grouping my students. So, of course, not every online person shows up, but then I thought, if they can't make it, or they're late getting into the class, or they're just one of those late people, they probably deserve to be together anyway, right? Okay, so there's my last group. I don't have to worry about them. So that has worked out very well for me. And then I have theory about where people fit in classroom. Okay, so my classroom groups, I've been just taking chunks. I take the 2 here and the 2 here. And then I come over and take 2 and 2, because I find that people generally at the front of the class, they want to make sure they get the information. Sometimes they're up there because they need their glasses and they don't have them with them. But most of the time, people of a certain type of learning want to be close. And you know who you are. How many of you immediately walk in and sit at the back? Okay, well, I got 2 types of people that sit at the back. You want to know what they are? I find that at the back of the room, I'm going to find the people who are pretty adept already. So what they want to do is they're going to be working on other things, and they'll be grabbing the things they don't know from your conversation. Or I have the flip-flops. And they're going to be back there gaming, and they're not going to be listening, and they're going to be the ones that if they pass the class, they're lucky. Okay? So, and then the middle row, it's kind of this, I don't know, skill level. The classroom was last time because my day class, because of this registration thing, I didn't have to worry too much. I got the last row. I got 4 rows in the room. This is so silly to talk about. But I got 4 rows in the room. And I had people either migrate all the way to the back or in the first 2 rows. I kind of had a bare 3rd row, so I didn't have to worry about what I was going to do. I thought 3rd row I would just clump together, and they're going to have to figure out some keys so they can talk to each other. So that has actually worked very well. And so I made sure that they knew immediately who their facilitator was. And there's generally some person that will step up the first time through. You've always seem to have a leader. And if not, somebody essentially gets guilted into it. So my first facilitator, and I just make sure that I really do expect that they share that job. Everybody needs those points. And we can set it up in Angel to where I can have one assignment that has these 4 drop boxes feeding into it. So if you are a facilitator, you get your facilitator points, and it shows up under that assignment. Yeah, question?
I just want to share here, I do an online survey with one of my students.
Right. Oh, yeah.
I designate like 8, 10 areas.
Right.
Having them evaluate themselves on the leadership, communication, the word skills, graphic art skills, photography.
Yeah, right.
Depending on that. And then I try to match them up so that there are those who rate themselves high in a certain area on each team. Those.
Oh, I see, sure.
Yeah.
I had them the
it's
first...
funny though because I did that to my online
right.
saying the different sections of the class on campus-based, they were already clustered together.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe there is some sort of awareness.
I know, I have this is classroom seating according to this, indeed. But, and I found that I had them the first time through, I had them all send me a biography.
tell me about yourself and your skills in these areas. And if they leave one off, just too dependent on what they chose to share. Like that, but then all the work is on me as well, because then I'm saying, okay, this person is FCC, this person is AMC. Sometimes I wasted a lot of time trying to place students, and then it didn't really turn out the way that you would expect anyway. And I finally thought, I'm thinking that based on what in the classroom, you don't put a high person next to a really low person, because this person will be guilted into trying to teach this person everything, and this person just is feeling overwhelmed, and it's not a win-win situation. And so I felt that they need to be a little closer in what they can do. And it's nice to have at least somebody know what's going on in the group, so they're not completely lost. But I also, not this past semester, previous semester, I had a group of students that were really lost, and they were in my day class, which was fortunate. And I thought, these people need some help. And so that was the group then that I spent the most time with. So rather than making another person in a group get sidetracked and spend time trying to bring someone up to speed that may not get there, that was the group I spent time with. So that was that. Yes?
It's funny, we all have a different ways of different groups.
Yeah.
So my way now is, for the initial group, I do it random.
Yeah, that's work program.
And just by gender. Only criteria.
Oh, right, yeah.
So the first group, and then as the semester goes on,
Right.
Then you change groups and I get a
Yeah. Another instructor there at TMCC, Judy Frederickson, and she and Kat House presented here last year. I don't know if you attended that presentation last year, but I know that Judy does that. She just throws them in randomly in there. And I think it works out. I this semester did not have to refactor my group. And I had chosen them randomly the first couple times. They're kind of based on their biographies. And I really had a few places, some groups that were dysfunctional. And I don't know if it was because the students who got into the class were all the early registering type people anyway, so they were more motivated. They really wanted to be in the class. They wanted to make sure there was room in the class for them. Because my online class will show and people are waiting. They're waiting for somebody to get purged because of lack of payment. Okay, the day class, not so much, If they could have a chance to take online, they will. Let's see. Anything else I wanted to mention about that? Anybody have any questions? Have I shown you? Yes.
Yeah, you say you teach a similar class online and during the day?
Yeah.
Any cross-communication or collaboration between the two sessions?
This last semester, I hadn't been tasked because they were full classes. This last semester, I debated about doing that. I actually had, it's kind of interesting, but it doesn't count. I had some students whose work hours may have changed, and they said, can we just do online? And I said, well, it's the same class, go for it. If I don't see you in class, I don't see you. But they still had that communication already going on with their date. I had debated about that. And so I started,
it worked out really well.
It doesn't work out really well. I wondered, because this last semester I thought, should I do my groups where it's 2 and 2? Or 2 and 3, as it turned out. I had a lot more in the day class.
Many times your online people, they need some handholding.
Yeah, they do.
To the
Yeah. And I told them too, if they can fit in, they're welcome to come to that day class anytime. I tell my online students that, because there are people that they know very well they should be in the classroom, and just because of work hours or for whatever reason, kids at home, whatever is happening, they know they can't, but I've made that an option for them. And then I had a great lab, a lady in the lab, because several years back she took my class. So I keep her updated with the new textbooks, and then people can come in and ask her on Friday evenings and Saturday mornings, and that's made a huge difference.
So I wonder if you or anybody else in the room has knowledge or experience about learning management systems that can bridge the silos that we have. I don't think it's Blackboard, so every class is distinct. You can't cross-pollinate.
Right.
Does anybody have any experience with it?
You can ask people about what you say, you can ask people about you.
You're not allowed to learn on the system.
Well, see, I could, Right. Yeah. I haven't, I had the opportunity, as I say, last semester, just because they were all grouped into the same class itself. And here's the intriguing thing, too, is when I met up with my online students, I was saying, well, I'd like, what kind of a collaboration tool would you like to use? I provide this. Well, Google Plus had just come out. I mean, you learn things all the time, and so we all signed up for Google Plus accounts. And so one of those groups there used that the entire semester. Yeah. Which, you know, they made a circle. I don't know what they make it, because I've heard now that they got hangouts that you put them in a circle and then that circle can communicate. As long as they're in that circle, they get to see what's in there. So they use that. And I requested that they make me a member of that circle as well because I wanted to try to monitor it. But since they chose that platform, I have had students, this was ironic, students in my day class used Skype. So, yeah, well, I must have been at home. But they were the group up here in this corner until their night owls anyway, and they were happy using Skype. I had a semester before a really strong group online, and it turned out it was older students, which I thought was interesting. Well, they met up at coffee shops. The lady said, you know, for that last test, I knew we'd have to sit together and we better iron this thing out. She said, I made him dinner. I said, you better show up, I will feed you. They met at her house. I know. And so, so that has worked out so far, you know, really well for me. And as I say, I learned from the students and I gave them, I probably talked to them too long. I do for my final project. I don't have, yeah, for the teamwork, I'll tell you, the teamwork I was thinking, okay, my focus on the teamwork here is more process. You know, they need to know their stuff. I didn't show you any of the other tasks, and I apologize, I've got other places to go. But on the other ones, the facilitator is still responsible. They're responsible for getting everything to work together. And in some of the other tasks, I do have them work on individual pages, where the styling has to be cohesive for an overall look and feel, but then they have to show me that they can do some individual things on those pages to show me that they've actually learned how to do that. So their second one is where they learn how to interlink pages, you know, and the first learning their styling. So,
and Cindy, excuse me, if they have more questions, maybe you can email her. And
just real quick, do you have them assess each other and then assess themselves?
I didn't this time. I had in the past. I actually had requested that each facilitator send whether the students. They were really vocal this time, though. If they were having problems, I heard about it. You know, I had one group in the day class that had 6 people in it, and they were, well, you know, these guys aren't very careful. That was the day class I heard about. And online just worked really well. I can kind of monitor that from their discussions. I think that makes nice, because if they use that discussion form, then I can do that.
thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, you didn't get to your name.
On the bottom of your page is the Learn TBL site. And, and Elaine, there's a link. Did you happen to check?